and religion, access to justice, and right to information. His LLM thesis gave a critique of the essential religious practical practices test, which is used as standard by the constitutional courts in India to understand the scope, content of religion deserving constitutional protection. Before joining BMU, Mr. Anubhav Raj Shekhar was an assistant professor of law in Bangalore. He has experience of teaching core courses on constitutional law and criminal procedure to undergraduate students. Additionally, he took an elective on right to information. His love for teaching and his vast knowledge is gonna be a very eye-opening experience for our viewers today. Sir is gonna share his experience and also the art of writing with respect to our participants today. So I welcome you wholeheartedly for today's conversation.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir. Sir, to begin with today's session, I would request you to please throw some light on our today's topic, which you have suggested uh, for the guidance.
Sure. So today we are going to discuss academic writing and research. And I believe when we were ideating, Khushbu and I thought, we should have a topic which is something that is close to undergraduate student, because I was informed that the audience is generally undergraduate students for this program. And I went back into thinking what were the challenges that I faced as a sophomore, as a third year student, or as a student in the penultimate year of law schools. And I thought that what can you better than discussing how to do academic research and academic legal writing specifically.
Right, sir. So, to start with, what, why do we actually engage in academic legal writing? What exactly do you mean by academic legal writing?
Sure. I think if I have to think from the perspective of a second year student, I think it would be a task to understand why is law school making me write, and I hope your law school is making you write a lot, because as a lawyer, you have to understand that writing is a critical component of the skill set that you bring to the table. So I understand that if you're in the second year, it's difficult to understand at the moment, but the question as to why we engage in academic legal writing, this can have a three-pronged answer actually. First of all, you write because you want future generations to appreciate a problem which is relevant to society. So when a professor is writing, or a lawyer is writing, or a student is writing, the agenda could be that, maybe in the later time, there'll be some person who would be willing to appreciate a problem. Like, let's just take an example. uh, Privacy is an issue which is very current right now. So the initial paper, or the seminal paper on it, is a 1912 paper actually, written by an American. So people still read that to appreciate the problem of privacy, around privacy, that we are dealing today. So that's one. The second thing is that you
Right.
want to take a long-term view of a present problem, right? So maybe you want to appreciate the past of a problem, or the present, and even the future, right? An example could be that of papers around legal history. Um, if you want to, let's say, talk about gay rights in India, right? Then you have to appreciate how Section 377 came into place, how it has continued even after independence, whether it belongs to Victorian philosophy, morality, or it's a part of Indian culture, so on and so forth. Another example could be that of, let's say, from I'm taking criminal law example because that's something that connects people. So let's say Section 124A of the IPC, right, Indian Penal Code, which deals with sedition law. So you may
Right.
want to read someone like Chitranshul Sinha, whose book is out there on the topic. And last point uh, is that, and this is something that all of us do actually, and this is critical to any law student, which is that you're commenting and critiquing on doctrinal developments, And when I say doctrinal development, that maybe, an example would be that, let's say the Puttaswamy case on privacy gave us the standard of proportionality, right? So you may want to critique that proportionality test that has been evolved. Or if you are doing freedom of religion and then the test is that of essential religious practices, or if you are doing equality and the test is that of reasonableness, so you want to critique. And as students, that is what we engage in, right? We are saying that the court has said this, but we do not agree. So you want to critique or comment on doctrinal developments that are happening. So that could be another reason. But in any case, as a lawyer, I think it is absolutely necessary that you engage in academic legal writing, especially during the course of your law school.
Right, so very rightly pointed out. As you just mentioned about doctrinal, I'm going to take that up later in the section because I think that's too early for me to talk about doctrinal research. So I would first request you to please tell me, as like you just mentioned, that it's very important for the law student to get into academic writing, and probably that is the reason that starting from the very first semester they have these assignments and projects wherein they are required to do their research. So what according to you should be the method of this research? How should they start with their research from those assignments?
Right. Um, I think that's very important question. And as a student, the first thing that you must do when you get an assignment is that you should understand the nature of the assignment. What is the assignment actually asking me to do? That's one. That is on paper. Second thing is
Right.
that you should be clear what the expectation of the professor is, right? Or are. So if you think that the assignment is not clear to you, then you should definitely reach out to the professor and say the assignment is not clear to me. I don't understand what is exactly required of me. So please clarify, right? Because of course you are going to be graded later on. So if there's a doubt, please reach out to your professor. That's one. And why am I saying this? Because during the course of your 5 years, the assignments will vary in their form and structure. Like I'll tell you, at my university, I work at the BML Munjal University, which is a Hero Group initiative. So we start with something like, in the first year, we start with something like a response paper, right? Where you just go through a reading and you are asked to respond to the primary arguments of the author. So that's a response paper, right? You look into the fact whether there are any assumptions, you look into the fact that whether the assertions are valid or not, and you respond considering your own experiences on what you have read. Then other sort of assignments could be that of, let's say, in the first year could be that of IRAC, that where you will just have to, if you are given a case, you need to tell me the issue, the rule, the application, and the conclusion of it. We may discuss that in later stages of this discussion, if time permits. Uh, then you can do, let's say, a case comment, right? So if the assignment is that of a case comment, then you have to understand the case in detail and then comment. Just as I was telling you earlier, maybe that if you take the example of Puttaswamy case, and if you want to say that I do not agree or I agree, so that will be a case comment. Further assignment could be legislative analysis. Let's say someone gives you an act and you have to analyze. I remember doing an analysis of the NREGA Act, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, when I was pursuing my LL.M. Right, so that's another example. You can also do a policy analysis. You can do a book. I mean, you can be asked to do all of this, and you can also be doing a book review where you just read a book, and then if maybe you want to write an appreciation post or you want to critically analyze the book, right? And then of course there are general things like you're writing for a law review, which is a general article, or you're doing a longer work in the form of a dissertation, or you're writing a textbook and commentary, but that will not form part of your regular assignment. So please, the reason why I've told you that these are the different types of assignments is so that when you see it, you should be able to identify what you exactly need to do, right? So
Right.
that's it.
Right. Right, sir. So as you pointed out was the entire list basically of what can be done. You talked about case commentaries, you talked about book reviews, you talk about the literature, you know, giving your views on any new legislation which has come into picture. I would like to request you to please tell me as to how exactly do we go about it? What exactly do you mean by case commentary? What exactly is a book review? How do we write it down? How do we have to pen it down? What is the body of it? What are the different subheadings we need to use?
That I mean, see, um, the, the point is that it would really depend on person to person. First of all, what they wish to write in the structure. Like my structure will never be the same as your structure. But to start off with, I think uh, generally when we ask students to write assignments, and people are just starting off, what we do is that we ask them that there should be an introduction, there should be a conclusion, and then there should be a main body, right? And we also focus on how you write the introduction, the main body, and the conclusion. So let's say you want to make, you have a, and we'll come to this later on, on how to make an argument. I'm sure that we're going to discuss that in later period because that is related to this question. Then you'll see, let's say if you want to make 3 arguments in your paper, right? Rather than just going on rambling that this is what it is, what you should do that in the introduction of your paper is you tell the speaker reader that what, this is what my paper is about. I have 3 arguments to make. This is argument 1, this is argument 2, this is argument 3, and the last portion is the conclusion, right?
Right,
So you have your thesis completely spelled out. Thesis is the main point of your paper. If it is there in the
right,
introduction, it is good writing because see, imagine you are the reader, you are not the writer. Let us reverse it.
right,
If you are the reader, what do you expect? You expect that when you are starting to read something, you should understand it, right? Rather than, so
right,
your point is that you read it from the perspective of the reader, and whether the reader will be able to understand or not, right? So clearly spell it out. This is my main point, and this main point, for this main point I have 3 arguments, and this is the conclusion. And then you go to the main body, and then you discuss that in detail. In the conclusion, what you can do is then you can simply write, these were the 3 arguments, and I have satisfied whatever I said. I have proved what I wanted to do. So with that, you will have
right.
a complete structure, and this can be used for almost, at least for argumentative assignments, you can use it. Maybe for a book review, you will have to engage far more with what the author says and write your agreements and disagreement. But still you can use this broad structure for even a book review, I would say.
Right, sir. So, for the viewers, you need to write not as a author, but as someone who's going to read it, so that आपको पता हो कि जो मैं लिख रहा हूँ उससे किसी को भी समझ आए कि एक्चुअली जो वो पढ़ने वाला है वो क्या पढ़ने वाला है, उसमें क्या क्या लिखा हुआ है और वो उसके काम का है भी या नहीं. So you clarify it in the introduction so that it becomes easy for the readers to know whether this is something which they want to read or which is what their topic they're looking for or not. Moving on, so we're talking about writing. So as we say, research means do searching again and again, and for that we need to read again and again, whether papers or articles or any scholarly material which is available. So how do I read a paper?
Right. Um, this will take a bit of time to explain actually, but there are 4 parts to reading anything, and this is called close reading. I want to make this very clear that reading is an essential part of writing. Let me just tell you that, because if you believe that you can just start writing on a topic without reading, that is not research. Then perhaps you would be good at maybe fiction writing, right, if you want to write a story. But in order to do research, you need to first read. You have to do at least a decent amount of literature review, okay, and for that you need to read, right? But how do you do the reading, right? You have a text with you, and maybe it's an academic text, you are finding it difficult to maneuver. So what are the steps that you can follow? So there are 4 steps actually. You can do previewing, annotating, analyzing, and responding. I've told you 4 things: previewing, annotating, analyzing, and responding. I'm going to go a bit into the details of what I mean by all of these 4 points. so that you get a fair sense. And then if the audience is interested, I will also be happy to suggest a reading on this. There's a very famous reading. It's not famous, but it's a very interesting reading by one person called Manuel Valley, who writes on how to read. So, uh, coming to the first point of previewing, so you have to understand previewing means that gathering as much information about this text as you can before you actually read it. Okay, now how do you do that? How do you get gather information without reading it, right? So you have to first understand
right,
what is your purpose of your reading. Why are you reading it, right? Have you been asked to summarize a particular piece, right? Do you only want to know the
right,
main points of the thesis, or you're being asked to respond to a piece? So that will decide how in-depth understanding is required. The first thing you must do for any reading is that you should look at the title of the text. What does the title, what can the title tell me? And trust me, all smart authors, what they do is that they have a title which is a working title. A working title means that it conveys what the text is about. They don't want to keep it cryptic and mystery. They don't want mystery. What they do is that they will tell you exactly what they want from the title, and you will be sure, okay,
right,
that this word is
right,
coming. Then you should look at what does the, I've just told you that the introduction and conclusion paragraphs, if written well, will tell you what the data, what the text is about. So you should
paper is,
look, sorry.
yeah, what the paper is about.
Exactly. So you should look at the
Right,
introductory and the concluding paragraphs, not just of the paper, but of each section. Okay. So you should look at introductory and concluding paragraphs, and they'll tell you broadly what the arguments are, and you'll get some sense of what the body would be about. Okay. So you should be very
right,
careful with the opening sentences and opening sentences of each paragraph. Right. This is going to sort of
right,
help you make a skeleton before you actually get deep down, and you'll also know the thesis. Now once you've done that, this is previewing. You annotate. Annotate means you have a pen or pencil in your hand. Remember, if you want to do good reading, you should always have a pen and paper in your pen in your hand. And if you are doing it virtually, you should always do it in a software where you are allowed to mark and highlight and write the main points. Okay, so you should write the thesis, main points of the piece. You should underline whatever is important. What is the evidence that has been used to support argument, you should mark, right? If there
right,
is anything that is unfamiliar to you, you should definitely mark that so that you can take it up later. Okay, one very interesting point that you can do is that you can write personal experiences. Let's say the author is writing, let's say you are reading um, on anything which details experiences, let's say experiences of um, women in India, right? Women who practicing in ports in India, right? So there's recently been a study actually that what are the percentages of women lawyers who are practicing. So what has
mm,
been your experience? That experience, if you write, then the findings that you are reading about will become more concrete and easier to understand and remember. Okay,
right,
underline the sources, because the sources become very important. Are they credible or not, right? The person you are reading, is that person credible or not? So
right,
these things will sort of help you understand if you have a pen and paper with you. Though I'll just conclude in a minute this answer, because this is very important actually. The once you have done this is the finishing of your first reading. Now you do it again. What you have done just now
mm,
is that you have just skimmed through it, tried to identify important parts, things you haven't understood. Now what you need to do is that you need to analyze the reading. Okay, how do you analyze the reading? Firstly, you look at whether the evidence that has been given by the author is sufficient or not. So the author is making an assertion, whether that assertion has been backed by enough evidence or not. That is the first thing you find. Second is you need to evaluate the sources, whether the sources are
mm,
relevant or not, whether the sources are credible or not, whether the sources are current or not. Is the work that you are reading written in the 1970s? Everything has changed, but you're still reading it. So that is something that you need to know.
right,
Then you need to analyze the assumptions. I'll give you an example also, that sometimes what happens is that author writes and they have some assumptions in their mind, which perhaps they, on the basis of which they make their arguments. So you may want to analyze the assumptions also. Like for example, if an author says that uh, that that my school is superior to others because the ratio of students is to teachers is very low. This is the sentence. That's it. Okay, that student teacher ratio is very low. So the what is the assumption here? The assumption is that student teacher low ratio is good, and students will get more attention if there are more teachers per student or more less students per teacher, right? So these are the assumptions, so you should be able to identify these assumptions also. So I think those are some of the points. The last point is responding, actually, where you can read and write a response so that you can better understand the topic. But if you keep these things in mind, they will really help you navigate. Maybe right now you're listening to it and you'll be like, this sounds very complex, but it's actually very easy once you start doing it. I'll be happy to share a
Yeah.
reading on the point that I've just said, so you can remember it. Yeah.
So, sir, how do we actually come across that whether we have understood what we have read or not, or whether it is useful for us or not?
Well, useful. I mean that is really subjective. Whether it is useful or not, it really depends on. Uh, um, let's say if you are trying to write an assignment, and
Right.
there's an author who supports your point, right? And you have been able to identify that particular author, and you have gone through the reading and the supporting. So you can give an argument and say that my argument is actually supported by this authority. So that becomes
Right.
useful. Now, whether you have
Right.
understood or not, again, that is a very subjective question. But I think one way of finding out is doing group reading. When you're reading in
Uh,
groups, what happens is that you discuss the important points, and you have the opportunity to agree, you have the opportunity to disagree with others, and in fact correct them and have an opportunity to be corrected, right? So I think that's one way of
right.
doing whether you have understood the problem. Yeah.
And so then, how do you actually curate an argument in a paper?
Okay. All right. How do you curate an argument in a paper? um, Firstly, we must remember that a paper is not a data dump. When I say it is not a data dump, I mean that you just can't take all information that is there in the topic and then dump it there. That's not what people are looking
Hmm.
for. People are looking for
Right.
a proper argument which is relevant to the topic. Okay, so
Right.
generally the problem that I have seen in India is that, let's say, there should be a right to health, or right, or people should have the right to choose their sexuality, or gay marriages should be recognized, so on and so forth, right? When people are talking about whether
Right.
there should be a right or not, generally the papers that you see in India is that, the UDHR says this, ICCPR has recognized it, USA has also recognized it, so India should also recognize it. Now this is not argumentation. This is
Right.
bad argumentation. Okay, because if China is using Sinopharm vaccine, should India also use Sinopharm vaccine? I mean, the fact that something is good for another country may not necessarily be good for our country. So this line of argumentation of looking towards other countries and saying they are doing it, so we are doing it, but this is very common in India. I'm sure all of us have
Right.
come up with paper. So this is not
Right.
argumentation. Data dump is not argumentation. Then what is an argument?
An
Is
argumentation. Yes.
right? So I'll just come to that, and I won't tell you that an argument actually has a structure. And you,
Okay.
all of you can, if you have your pen and papers, you can note this down, that how do you curate an argument, because uh, I learned it very late in life, and I have gone through all the struggles. But if you have the opportunity to write this down, and if you have the opportunity to implement it, please do it. Okay, so the first point is that an argument will have a claim. Point number one, an argument will have a claim, that what is your point, what do you want me to believe, if I'm saying that my assertion is that you should take the coronavirus vaccine, you should take the COVID vaccine. Okay, so this is an assertion I'm making, this is a
Hmm.
claim I'm making, right? This is a claim I'm
Right.
making. But this is
Right.
not an argument. This is just an assertion.
Hmm.
That's it. There has to be something more to
Okay.
than an assertion, right? India is the best country in the world. This is not an argument. This is just a merely a
Yeah.
claim. For this to become
This is just a case.
an argument, there has to be more than just this. A claim has to be
Right.
backed by reasons. Okay, why do you say
Yeah.
what you are saying? Why should I agree with
Hmm.
you? So you should take the COVID vaccine because COVID vaccines are safe. That's the reason, right? COVID, you should take
Hmm.
the COVID vaccine because it neutralizes COVID. It has neutralizing antibodies and it is safe. So that's the reason why you should take the COVID vaccine. India is the best country in the world because we have diversity, we have unity, so on and so forth, right? But again,
Right.
if I'm telling you that you should take the COVID vaccine because it is safe, because it has neutralizing antibodies, this is still not enough for you to believe me, right? Because this is just me saying something and giving you a reason. So perhaps for academic purposes or for purposes of argumentation, like if you're really seriously about writing an argument which is around this, so someone will say that you are saying I should take the vaccine, you are saying it's safe, you can saying that it provides antibodies, but you are not telling me says who, where are you getting this evidence from, right? So the
Right.
first part is the
Right.
claim, then is the reasoning, then is the evidence that you need to show to support. Then you are going to say that, you know what, the ICMR has said that the Covaxin is 77% effective or whatever, right? Or Oxford vaccine is safe, WHO has approved it, right? Or the Pfizer vaccine is safe because the CDC in America has approved it, or there is enough data, this is this, etc., etc., right? But then someone is going to come back and tell you that, you know what, there has been a study and it has been found that there is some disease which affects the neurologically affecting disease, right, which happens if you take the vaccine, right? So that's an objection that someone is throwing at you, right? So then you need to address
One
that
second.
also.
One
Sorry.
second, sir. Sorry to interrupt. Actually, I think there was some technical glitch. So we missed out from your evidence point. You talked about ICMR has backed it. So if you can just please repeat that.
Sure. So the point that I was making
Yeah.
was, I hope you have understood that uh, that there is a claim, right? That what do you
Right.
want me to believe? That is the assertion. That assertion has to be backed by reasoning, right? So the example that I gave was the
Right.
coronavirus vaccine is safe. You should have the COVID vaccine. That's my assertion. Then I'm saying that you should take it because it is safe and it
It is
produces
safe.
neutralizing antibody.
Right.
Now that the third part of an argument is that of evidence. Evidence is that why should I believe your reasoning? And the point that I
Right.
was making was that you should believe that the COVID vaccine is safe because the ICMR in India has said that Covaxin is safe, 77% effective, no side effect, etc., etc. The AstraZeneca vaccine, because in the UK it has been found to be effective and safe. Pfizer in America, CDC has said it's safe. So that is evidence because some
Right.
particular results have come up after study, and this is what the result is. So that's the evidence to support your claim, right?
Right.
Now, if
Right.
somebody makes an objection to your claim, right, then you need to address
Hmm.
that objection also. Okay, so let's say I told you that you should take the vaccine because it's safe and effective, then and it has been backed by these reports. Then you come back and tell me, but I have read about a report which says that the vaccine also has side effects. Why should I then take the vaccine? So now you are raising an objection. So I am going to tell you that, you know what, yes, that's true, but the possibilities are very low, etc., etc., whatever. So that I'm acknowledging your objection and I'm responding to you. So when you're writing a
Right.
paper, you have your argumentation, you have your claim, reasoning, evidence. Then you need to actually acknowledge the work that has previously happened and engage with that work. If they
Right.
are supporting, then you cite them. If they disagree, then you cite them and tell them why you are right and they are wrong. Okay, why you are still
Yes.
sticking to your argumentation, and then then whatever is your conclusion. So those are your uh, major parts of an
Of
argumentation. I
argument.
hope the example makes it clear. Otherwise, I can give one more example,
Yes.
but I think it does make it clear. Yeah.
No, sir, it made you made it very clear with the help of the example. Uh, so we talked about argumentation, but when we talk about research, it means finding things again and again. And whenever a student starts with the research, the first thing he do is that he go on Google and he type whatever he has to research. So can you please tell us as to which websites or how exactly or from where should we actually do our research so that we get some scholarly articles or write-ups which can be used and which helps us to build a good bibliography or good noting or which helps us to get a good source for the research.
And there are multiple sources that are available. Um, so what you can do is that, of course, that you do Google search normally, uh, but there are some softwares that are available which are paid softwares, but which are generally available with institutes. So, for example, my
Okay.
university, we have JSTOR. Um,
Play
JSTOR is
Store.
one very good software, a website which allows you to sort of access scholarly papers from across the world, huge data set. Then there's Hein Online that you can look for. That's HeinOnline. So Hein Online is another thing that you can look for. If, of course, these require subscription. If you're looking for cases, then of course you have Manupatra, where all of us, I mean, everybody knows about it, right? So that's only for
Right.
cases and some company that's available. Um,
So
Otherwise,
what about
some.
Google Scholar?
Sorry.
You have what about Google Scholar, Mendeley, these web pages, these sites?
No, so Google Scholar, of course, there is, to some extent, some work you will definitely get, but of course, the
Okay.
point is that there's very limited that would be available free of cost. That's one
Right.
thing that you must think about. That, I mean, if you are getting material free of cost, that's great, um, but sometimes could be difficult. Some books are available free of cost. There are some initiatives, very radical initiatives, and people do use it. There's LibGen where you can get free books you want to access, so you can just type the name. I mean, to whatever extent is available, but I think LibGen is something very uh, that is very useful to a lot of scholars who use it. Um, uh, of course, there is some debate around whether books should be freely accessible, whether there is copyright violation, or not just copyright, but the fact that, can you just ensure that books are freely available, right? So some people say it is fair use, etc. That's another debate. Um, then there's this place called Sci Hub. Sci Hub is another very controversial. In fact, there was a case in the Delhi High Court. They were providing free papers. You could just go on the website and
Okay.
use the DOI number. I think there's something called DOI
Yeah.
link.
Right. Right.
Right. So you can access papers through that. So that's another thing. I mean, these are things that are available. I mean,
Right.
so I'm just listing out again. The use remains to be debated, but it's just out there. So and there has been controversy. So I thought I'll just let you know about this person. Yeah.
Right. So it is better that we use these or some of these for doing our research and not only going to Google and trying to
Absolutely.
get whatever we get from it because that's actually not authentic for you to use them for your thesis writing or your dissertation writing. The sources do matter, right, sir?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think you should definitely do that. depend on credible sources. You should know where they are writing, who they are writing. Check the background of the author. What are their affiliations? What are their previous works? I think all of that goes into deciding. Just don't. Uh, just don't quote anyone, right? I mean, if let's say uh, you put up a paper, right, and someone from the your senior, also 1 year senior, puts up a paper, you can't be quoting your senior, right? Because they, I mean, let's just face it. Uh, you
Yeah,
can't.
right. Because the authenticity matters.
Uh, I mean, if your senior has an argument of their own, then yes. But if they're just restating an argument, it is important that you cite the author who had first made it. I think
Well,
that's
first,
important. Credit is important to them. Yeah.
yes, right. So moving ahead, we talk about the website. Now let's talk about the journal. We see nowadays that there are a lot of calls for papers in external, via journal. We have peer reviewed, we have UGC recognized, we have Scopus. We have n number of options to for getting our research work published. So how do we go about it? How do we shortlist? What is the difference between these journals? Like how should we decide as to which journal should we go for?
So I think yes, identifying the right journal is critical. It's important, and identifying a journal which has value is also important, right? Because you work
Right,
very hard and then you just end up publishing. And I know a lot of people who are actually falling for it, right?
right,
There are a lot of places from where you will get calls who will ask you for money for publishing. So I
right,
think that's one of the criteria when you should say no. I'm not. If they're asking you for money, then you should try and understand that it could be a racket, which is
right,
very common these days. But how do you identify, especially if you're new, right? So how do you, if you're in the first year, your second year, third year, how do you know which is where you have a paper? Where do you go searching for a journal?
right,
So one thing that you can do is that uh, you can identify where are the leaders publishing. Let's say you want to write on Pegasus is an issue that is happening these days, right? You want to write on
right.
privacy. Then who are the leading authors on, or who are the leaders who are writing on this at the moment? Perhaps you can start with newspapers, serious newspapers, right? Maybe you can want to see the editorial in Indian Express or the Hindu, and you say who's
Right,
writing. Oh, you know what? Someone called Vrinda Bhandari is writing, right? So maybe let me just have a look at her profile. Navanda Bhandari is a leading advocate on digital rights in India now. So if you want to
right,
see her CV, perhaps you may want to go Google her CV, see where she has written, right?
hmm,
Where has she been published? And if you check, you will see that she has written published paper in Oxford Human Rights Journal, right? So now you know there is an Oxford, because they will not publish in just any place. So just start from the newspaper, look for people, see where they are publishing, and then you'll have a list to begin with, right?
right,
Then
right,
gradually you will see that Oxford has multiple publications when you go on the
hmm,
website. Then you'll
hmm.
find that you have multiple options now. Similarly, there will be
Okay,
someone else. You'll find Taylor and Francis also has it. Now,
yeah,
what I can tell you in India, of course, then there you will like, what do I find in India? You can always start from top law schools. Let's say
okay,
NLS will have a National School of India review, right? So
yeah,
NLSIR,
yeah,
and you can find. You can go to its website and see what is the scope. You have
right,
NALSA, you have NUJS Bhopal. I was in Bhopal. You have the NLIU law review that we come up with. I was a member of the editorial board in Bhopal of the law
okay,
review, and and you see that these are good places to publish to start with, right? Then you can go
right,
ahead. There's something called Indian Law Review at the moment, which is doing some
okay,
phenomenal work internationally. So you may want
hmm,
to check out Indian Law Review. These are some great. These are some good places, but there is absolutely no manner in which, irrespective, even if we stay until night, that I can tell you all the places. So I can tell you how to find out, and this is the way you can start at least, right? So I
okay.
think that, yeah.
And so please throw some light on these different categories of peer reviewed, Scopus, and UGC recognized, UGC approved. Uh,
So this UGC, there are some journals which are UGC recognized. I mean, I think The problem was that there were a lot of journals which came up, fake journals, as I just spoke about, right, without any quality, and they were
Right.
taking money, and then there were people who said that this is just not done. UGC should come up with a list of UGC approved, which is I think now called UGC Care List, which
Yes.
has a number of journals which are recognized and you can publish. Law remains very difficult still because there are very few journals in the UGC
There
Care
are
List
very
for
few
law.
journals. Yes. Right.
Right. And again, the fact that why are you writing becomes important. Are you writing just because you want to be a part of UGC care list? I do not approve of that. I mean, how does it matter? So if and in America, this is a huge problem. In Singapore, for example, this is a huge problem. Singapore says that you need to NUS, for example. I remember a senior professor who was teaching me at the Azim Premji University. He said that they were also teaching at NUS, and they said that NUS insists that you publish in American journals only, and I am
Okay.
writing about India. I want to get published in Indian journals, right? So he was
Indian journals.
published in NUJS. So NUJS, which is the National University in Kolkata. So he published there, and NUS in Singapore is saying you have to publish in America. He said that it does not serve my purpose. So who is
Right.
your audience? Do you want to reach your audience? Then you might as well think that way. But if you just want to go by UGC, I mean, that's up to you. Scopus, on the other hand, again, there are we have this obsession that you want to. There are certain institutions which demand that you should have Scopus publication because supposedly a lot of good journals are indexed on
Hmm.
Scopus. So
Right.
uh, when you go on the website, when you identify a journal, you go on the website, you see indexation. Uh, so you will find that whether that journal is within Scopus or not. So that's how you identify Scopus. Again, these are just it's just a thing that has been made out of it. I mean, it's not necessary that if your journal is not in Scopus or not, it is not good, but just that nowadays rewards are based on whether you are getting published in Scopus or not. So it becomes important. That's it.
Right. So moving ahead, we have talked about writing, we have talked about getting it published, but we missed on plagiarism because after writing, the first thing which we need to talk about is plagiarism so that it can get published. So what exactly do you mean by plagiarism and how should we check our plagiarism?
Sure. So plagiarism essentially is plagiarizing is that when you pass off somebody else's work as your own work. So
Right,
it amounts to academic dishonesty, something that we want any institution or academia in general would want to discourage. So plagiarism, very simple example: you write an essay and your friend in class submits it as her or his assignment. You wouldn't like that, right? So similarly,
right,
we work
right,
so hard through the year. It takes 6 months, 5 months, 4 months to write a paper, and then somebody else just uses the paper. You would not like it, right? So
right.
that is what plagiarism is. But sometimes plagiarism can take different forms. So I just want you to be careful, and I'll tell you like the four different forms of plagiarism actually, and I'm going to just list them out and explain in brief what those um, forms of plagiarism are. First is that of direct plagiarism. So direct
Right.
plagiarism is where you just take it, right, word for word transcription of a section of someone else's work, and without giving any attribution,
Uh,
without telling the reader that I've taken it from this person, no quotation marks, nothing, right? You deliberately just take someone else's work, and you are unethical, academically dishonest, and then you
right.
just pass it off as yours. And when you are caught, I mean, then of course, what are the consequences they will follow. The second thing is very interesting. It is self plagiarism sometimes, and this is actually found in American authors. They do this a lot. They write one paper and then they write another paper which is more or less exactly the same paper. Okay, so that is self plagiarism, and that occurs when you submit your own work only which you have previously published as, I mean, of course you're publishing it again at a different place or maybe even the same place. So,
Right.
or the fact that you write something and then you mix previous parts of your earlier work and then you use it. Another example could be that there were a number of people involved in writing a report or a paper. Let's say three people are involved, and without taking their consent, you just incorporate part of the paper in a paper, in a separate paper that you are writing for yourself, right? So that's self plagiarism, um, broadly. The next plagiarism is is it's called mosaic plagiarism. And what happens in mosaic plagiarism is that when you borrow phrases from a source, or lines from a source, you are not even using quotation marks, but you use synonyms. Okay,
You twist
why?
the word, basically.
You just change the words like
Yes,
synonyms are, and
right,
you keep the general structure as the same, right?
right, right,
So
right.
structure is the same, the idea is the same, but mere wordplay, right? So maybe then
Yeah,
it
good.
could slightly become difficult for the software that will try to catch up your plagiarism, right? So this can be sometimes intentional, this can be unintentional. So there can be accidental plagiarism, which is the next thing, right? Um,
Right.
Accidental plagiarism occurs when person is neglectful. They're just neglecting the to cite their sources. They don't cite their sources, or they
Yeah,
misquote their sources. um, uh, so all these examples, of course there are several others, but broadly these are the four sort of
look at
um,
it.
plagiarisms, um, methods that have been identified. But now what you can do is, um, of course, one way of doing ensuring that you are not plagiarizing is you can use the software. Now, that again, there are some risks associated with that also, and I'll tell you. One is that please do not use. Uh, uh, Before I come to that, let me just tell you that there are softwares out there which help you identify whether your paper is plagiarized or not, okay, or whether
Yes,
you have plagiarism or not.
right.
Um, the most famous software is called Turnitin.
Turn it.
Institutions generally use, my university uses Turnitin, because we are very serious about academic integrity here. And writing starting from first semester in my university, all assignments have to go through Turnitin. So we are that serious about it.
Okay.
We do not allow anyone to just submit anything, because in my time we could pass it off, but not
Yeah,
anymore.
but from the first semester, that's pretty early, I guess.
Well, okay, but as I said, yeah, the point is that students should appreciate from the very start. It's not
Yes,
about learning skills, but it's about learning the values of
yes, yes.
integrity, and that's the
Yes.
reason we learn. Anyway, the point I was making was that Turnitin can be used. Now the problem is that sometimes, and mostly institutions have Turnitin. So maybe in your institution you can ask. Generally, it is with the library. You can go to the library and ask that this is my paper. I want you to run it through, but
Right.
ensure that you do not leave a copy behind in the repository. Okay. So
Yes,
what happens is, if you use these softwares, they store a copy, and when you
yes,
submit it, actually, that journal will tell you, you know what, this is plagiarized, and they'll tell you that, in this library it was found. Okay, and this
right.
happened to one of my friends who was studying in National University Delhi. He submitted his paper just to check, and the library, they just left it in the
Yeah,
repository, and then he had to
yes,
go back and request that, that this has happened. So please
right.
ensure that they're removing it from the repository, and that is precisely the reason that you should be very careful with what software. Please do not use just any software available online, because what if they store your article, then all your
Yes.
work will be down the drain. Okay, so requires investment. If your university does not have a plagiarism check software, please ask, please protest, whatever you have to do, just get a software for you.
Yes. So please be careful when you get your paper checked by anybody, because otherwise it's going to lead you in trouble and your paper will be 100% plagiarized. So just be aware and be cautious of getting your paper checked. So moving ahead, I see few questions in the comment section and I would like to take them up if you permit.
Sure, please do.
Yes, sir. So the student wants to know that it is generally very difficult to actually find a topic for research. So they want you to please share how to pick up an emerging topic.
So, An emerging topic, since you have mentioned emerging topic, though, what you can do is, first of all, of course, you start with the newspapers, because newspapers are where you will get what's happening actually, right?
What's happening?
So, an emerging topic will always be found in the newspapers. So you should be very careful about what read newspapers you are reading. Okay,
Yes.
please do not need. I mean, page three is not where you are going to find your article. You
Yes.
need to.
So if you're reading HT City, it will not help you find any emerging topic for your law research. You need to
Yeah.
read some good newspaper. You need to read the Hindu or the Tribune or any other, so if you want to name.
So again, it depends. I mean, like for example, I know Gautam Bhatia writes for Hindustan Times. So it's not that, of course, in the ST city you may not find, but in the editorial part of Hindustan Times you may find a good article, right? So uh, what author is writing, you can check out. Let's say, how do you want to access the newspaper? If you think that you want to read a particular article today, maybe you can just go on the website and see
Hmm.
what articles have been published today, and you see that I want to read a particular article but it's behind the paywall. For that day, maybe you can buy a different newspaper, right?
Right.
That's something
Right.
that you can do. So you have the Hindu, Indian Express. I think those are two good quality papers that you can always look for. Yeah.
Right. And so, what is the difference between blog articles, case commentaries, judgment review, and book review? That's the other question I see in the comment section.
So blog posts are more informal form of writing. Okay, so blog post may not necessarily follow any systemic manner of citation or form structure of writing. It's an open form. You can write the manner you want. If you're running your own blog post, then you can do it. Newspaper, it's akin to actually newspaper articles. There is no requirement as such, right, that you have to write in a particular way. Whereas when you are writing for a journal, they'll always come up that you need to follow Blue Book or
Yes.
Oscola for citation. You need to have
Right.
right. Journal will give you that this is the formatting that you need to follow when you are submitting your paper, so on and so
Right.
forth, right?
Right.
So that's about blog post versus rest. Okay, all of the rest, like if whether you're talking about, if you're publishing a book review in a journal, maybe, or if you're writing an article, if you're writing a judgment review, all these will follow very specific forms. But if you're writing a book review for a magazine, so where is it publishing? If you're writing it for, let's say, an Outlook, right, or let's say a Frontline, maybe you are not required to follow all that formatting, right? So yeah. Like I'll give you a small example. You can go and if you just search for me on bar and bench, you'll find a
Hmm.
couple of articles, or maybe I don't know. You'll find articles from me, and you'll see that they are in the sense that the structure. If I have to refer to another authority or a case law, what I do, I'll just add the link to the main text. You can just click and reach. But in an
Right.
academic journal, you will not find that, right? So
Okay.
you will find citations on the same page below or towards the end as end notes. So yeah.
And so I will take up the last question now, which is that how much importance does this publication hold in the law student's academic journey?
So see, it actually again depends on why you want to write, right? So I wrote an article recently on bar and bench, which said that which were my objections to the abolition of the 1 year LM program, which was
Okay.
proposed by the Bar Council of India recently. I wrote because I actually wanted to make a point that that
Okay.
this is what it is. Some people would just write because they want to be there and they want that I have published something. That's another reason why you want to publish. Or some people would just want to publish because I want to be in the UGCK. But anyway, the point is that what important does it hold? If you want to go into academia, it makes a huge difference later on in life, because what have
Right.
you published. If you want to go pursue a foreign LLM, then also it becomes important, because sometimes they really appreciate that this person has been published. Um, if you want to become a senior advocate now, I mean, the new rules that they are saying that sometimes they're looking into what they have contributed, and they look into journal articles also and other
Right.
things, like whether you have done pro bono services or not. So that also creates a good you'll see a lot of authors, lawyers writing books
Yes.
on cyber laws, etc. Some people just write it because it will help them get elevated also, right? You want to
Right.
become a
Right.
judge, So therefore, this person has contributed books, etc., etc.
Right.
So in terms of creating a perception, sometimes people write just because they want to write, sometimes people write because it helps them in their academic career. So,
Yes.
but in any case, if you write, it's always going to be a bonus, and I strongly encourage everyone uh, to
Indulge in some sort of writing and research.
sure,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful having you with us. I'm sure the participants must have learned a lot of new things from under your guidance through this session. And any concluding remarks from your side?
I just want to thank you, Kushbu, for inviting me for this, and I'm very happy to interact with everyone. I just want to say that if you want to reach out to me, my Twitter handle is at Anubhav Raj 92, ANUBHAVRJ 92. So, and I'm more than happy to always engage with budding lawyers, and if there's any guidance that I can give, I'll be more than happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a very good day. And
Thank you.
I'll see all the participants again in our next live session with Mr. Niklesh Ramachandran, AOR, Supreme Court of India, wherein sir will be sharing about how to crack your AOR exam or what exactly is an AOR exam all about. So we'll be streaming live on Tuesday, that is 27th, from 4 to 5. So stay tuned and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.